Welcome back to the Future Creator Podcast. It is a beautiful day in Bondi Beach, 75 and sunny. Got a little 6K in this morning on Bronte, and we are down a man. Alfie is not here, so it's just us. We are going to be talking about a fun topic today. It's going to be all about content creation and this idea of values over value and the importance that can play in, I think, building trust with an audience and helping you, I think, stand out from the crowd. So, Pavan, welcome in.
100%. I'm excited, man.
So where do we want to start?
I feel like an interesting place would be to start is, why do you think values, like the personal values, are becoming more important than informational value?
I think for me, it comes down to just what people are looking for on the platform. I think maybe a year or two ago, people were looking for more information, and then all of a sudden a ton of information came in, right? And now I think people really just want raw, authentic, real. And if you're a creator that can communicate that across the platform in whatever sort of storytelling format you do, whether that's visual or written or verbal, that's where you can really stand out. Because a lot of the niches have become commoditized, right? If you're a coach, like a fitness coach, like so many people are in shape today, right? So many people have information on what it is that you should eat and what it is that you should train. But if you can go a little bit deeper and tell people who are you as a person, that's where I think you can win.
The thing that I've realized, and it's really interesting to actually look at the macro, is to understand the shift that actually has happened within the last 2 years. The amount of people that actually have come onto the platform is insane. So the more people that keep coming onto the platform, the more coaches we have, the more videographers have, photographers, like whatever you do, to realize that there's actually thousands of people like you now, whereas it maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was still fairly new. Like people who are in the offline world were like just starting to come into the online and try to make money online. But I think now that there's like thousands of people that look like you, the real differentiation, I 100% 10 toes down, is on who you are as a person. And that's where I think the personal brand, a lot of people are missing. They just keep building a brand, which is, hey, this is what I do. This is my offer. This is what like the features are. But it's like, why should I buy from you? And I think that's the personal side in the personal brand. So yeah, I definitely think the people who are showing more of that personal side and like, you know, who you are, what's your values, what's your background, like find a way to connect other than just the offer. I think those are the people that are going to win in the future and now.
What do you think most people get wrong when they think about creating content? And like, I think a lot of us are told like, deliver value, like just pump stuff at your audience. Where do you think people kind of miss the mark when it comes to starting out and building their brand the right way?
Yeah, 100%. I think we've been told, give more information, give more value. And that's the only thing that, you know, we get told like nonstop. But I definitely think that is changing, especially from like a year or 2 years ago. Like back in the day, 2 years ago, I think it's really important that we did give information because there was a lack of information in the market. But I think currently where we're at, there's so much information. AI is solving all of these problems. So I think the thing that everyone is missing is, we think content is meant to deliver information, but what we're meant to do with content is to shift beliefs. And the reason why I say that is, if we think about the example of organic marketing versus paid media, for me, I truly believe in organic marketing, and that is like my method, that's my product, that's what I would want to like push out. And what I realize is, I'm not meant to give information about, you know, how to do organic marketing, you know, all the information, facts, values, framework, all of that. What I'm meant to do with my content is to shift beliefs into being like, why is this the method that's actually important to use? Because if we think about it, if I am pushing organic marketing, it's obviously because I believe in it. Like there is something about it that I value, and I think that is the important path. And what I'm meant to do as someone that's creating on the platform is to shift people's belief of what other areas that they're thinking, let's say paid media, into why organic media is the way. So instead of giving information, it's more about shifting their beliefs in why this method is better. And I think when you talk about the why in your content, it's always attached to your values. And the way I think about it is with organic organic marketing, for me, the way I look at it is it's like investing in yourself. And I believe in investing in yourself rather than like, you know, spending money like recklessly. So even the way I look at organic marketing, I try to get them to understand from a different point of view, which is, if you invest in your personal brand, it's like you're investing in the stock market or crypto or just investments in general. And it's a long-term play versus paid media, which is more like, you know, pay to play, renting, versus organic or building a personal brand is more like owning an asset. So I think more people need to create content to shift beliefs and showcase their values of why they're doing things, not how they're doing things. And I think that's the part that everyone's like missing.
Yeah, I think most people, when they get onto the platform as a creator, they forget how they behave as a consumer, right? If we think about all of our, affinity towards other creators in the platform, it's usually not because the information they're telling you. It's usually because there's some sort of connection that you have with them rooted down to their values. So when you think about creating content, you have to keep that in mind, is people are going to build a connection with you not based off the information you give them. It's, can they find common ground with you as a person and the values that you represent? And just for some reason, people forget that. Yeah. I think about my own page, right? I'm not the only business coach out there. I'm not the only person who can teach you these skills. People cannot come to me because of my story, because of my struggle. And that's where they find common ground with me. And I always tell new creators is, yes, you do have to give people an idea of what you're about, but you need to go a level deeper. If you just stay surface level, you can only get so far.
I think that's the biggest thing, is what you mentioned is reverse engineering the consumer behavior, like even how you buy things. I don't think a lot of people have analyzed why they buy things. And I think if you really look back at why you buy certain products or even services, it usually has an emotional attachment to it. There's something about it where you connect with their values over the actual features of the product. And like what you mentioned, it's like there's thousands of coaches, 1,000, videographers. There's whatever that you do, there's like thousands of people just like you. And it just comes down to like, what is the emotional attachment to it? And, sometimes it could be just like, friends that and it's like, I would rather just buy from someone I know or a friend. Or you're buying from someone that you feel like could be a friend because you share those similar values. So I 100% agree.
I mean, most of us make decisions off emotion, right?
Which most people don't believe, but they do.
Most people don't believe, but that's just the truth. And when you're consuming content, it is oftentimes an emotional decision of who do you connect with and who do you not. And just for some reason, people forget that when they're put in a position of like actually creating content. They spin their wheels of, what are the 5 tips I should give away today? But it's really can you go a level deeper? Can that person actually connect with you? If you can do that, you can stand out.
Can I ask you something? Because I think about this a lot in terms of like sharing our values, because I'm so deep on that. I truly believe that is the key to where we're heading. But I do believe that there is a other side to it, which is you need to show some level of competence, which is the rational side of someone's like purchasing decision. I think there is a level of competence that you need to show, but I think that is lower than most people think. So for example, I use videographer a lot because I was a videographer and I understand that world. But as a videographer, if you're showing up on the platform, I think there's a certain level where someone's going to look at you and they're like, okay, he's a videographer. He knows what he's doing. But I don't think you need to be the absolute best to be able to get more customers. I think you need that certain level of competence that someone's going to look at you and be like, all right, he's a videographer, versus someone who's like, oh, he's kind of starting out. He's trying to find his way. And if you show your values as a person early on, I think there still is a level of you got to also build some level of competence. And I think there is a balance there. But I think once you reach a certain level of competence, I think the rest is values. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I kind of view it as, the competency is the table stakes of people need to come to your page or your brand and know what you're about and what you offer. And then your values are what differentiate you.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like, if you were to walk into a coffee shop and the coffee was exceptional and the customer service was exceptional, you still know it's a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people make the mistake of not making it clear what they're about, and they over-index the completely opposite direction, where sure they're conveying their values and they're putting all their beliefs in the platform, but me as a consumer, I have no idea who you are and what you offer, and that's where there's a disconnect. So I think it's table stakes first, make it clear what you are and what you offer, and then win me over by ultimately communicating your values and building a connection with me. That's the way I view it.
100%. I think people keep over-indexing on the competent side. I saw this so much in the filmmaking world, which is even let's say the studio right now, we could have got it to a level where it's okay, it's good. But even for you guys, you're probably not seeing the little details, which I'm putting the efforts make this look a certain way, make this look a certain way. But if I was just showcasing that online, there's a certain level where the audience doesn't even understand what you're working on. The top 10% of filmmakers, the little details, the audience is not even seeing that. So by you working on that and trying to show competence in like this information or this value or like this thing, people aren't even seeing that. And what you said, it's like you need to start shifting now to how you can win people over based on the other aspects of yourself. So yeah.
I think the perfect business model to look at this is fitness coaching, right? Because there's so many fitness coaches on the platform today. Everyone's a fitness coach in 2025. And everyone's selling the same stuff. Like you can call your program whatever you want. You're selling training, nutrition, and accountability. That's what you're selling. So why do some coaches struggle to make any money and some coaches are pulling in 50 or 100 grand a month? It's not because of the program. It's because them as a person and the connection they build with the people who follow them. And that's, again, where most people get it wrong is, yes, you can have a great offer, but if people can't connect with you, they're never going to buy it. And if you can really focus on building that emotional connection with a viewer, that is where you will win on the platform. And I always tell people, it's like, you have to get past your own ego. You have to be willing to open up. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. Like nobody's perfect. And the more that you can kind of humanize your brand and connect with people, the better you'll be on the platform.
Well, what do you think is the thing that's like missing in showcasing your values, or how do you get people start thinking about showcasing their values over information?
I think people only want to show the wins and not the losses. You know, my brand is powerful because I talk about the losses. My brand is powerful because I talk about the struggle. That's where most people come to me. They don't say, wow, you have a great life. They say, wow, I see what you went through to get there. And that's where I build all of my clientele, is really from my story. And I always tell people, no matter what niche you're in, yes, you can have conviction. Yes, you can be incredibly confident in your field. But if that's all you talk about, it's really hard to build a connection, because most people who are watching the content are going through something. And if you can connect with them on the struggle, they're more likely to work with you and buy into what it is that you are really great at. And if you can balance the two, that's where I think you can be really successful.
It's so interesting when we think about like the word, even just value in itself. For me, the way I look at value is very simply, if it is scarce, it's going to have more value versus if it's abundant. And I think if you just simply look at it that way, of the things that are more scarce become more valuable. And like what we said, like in the AI world that we're moving into, information is abundant. The answers actually are abundant. But what is actually scarce is personal stories, is true authenticity, is sharing the losses. And I think by you sharing the thing that's scarce, that's how you stand out. What do you think about the idea of just even thinking of value simply as scarce? Because yeah, we're getting flooded with so much information that authenticity and true vulnerability is becoming rare.
Yeah, I think that's where everyone has a story, right? You really want to build a one-of-one personal brand. And the way you do that is through your story, because anyone can learn, anyone can learn to be a coach, right? And learn the skill set to deliver a program, but not everyone can replicate your story. And again, everyone has a story to tell. Some people might not believe it, but everyone has a story to tell. Everyone's gone through something. And if you can figure out how to package that and turn your mess into a message and put it on the platform, that is where you can be incredibly powerful, because someone out there is going to connect with you, right? Biggest part of my brand is my story with Mexico. The 9 months on my own, like locked in a box in isolation, nobody can replicate that story. So I would be foolish not to talk about it, because it's such a big part of my identity. And someone else has another version of that. I know you've gone through your own struggles in life and you've worked incredibly hard to get to where you are now, but everyone has a story. And I think most people, one, don't recognize they have a story, and then two, are afraid to talk about it, because again, it puts them in a vulnerable way on the platform. And that's actually your superpower. Like, to have a struggle to talk about is incredibly relatable. And if you can get past your fears and say, you know what, I'm going to share this with the world, that's where you can become really dangerous. And that's where people are going to ultimately get bought into you as a person. They're going to become an incredibly loyal follower, and they're probably going to become a client, depending on if you sell an offer.
Why do you think most people don't see their story as something valuable? Because I see that a lot. I think we're so accustomed to our story because we just grew up with it, and this is our life, and we just act very casual to how our life played out. But it's actually the superpower that's actually, again, very unique, and it's scarce, because not everyone actually grew up in the same way that you did. Even the person next door to you, even your brother or sister, like you guys grew up in the same household, but you experienced life completely different. And it's like there is a unique element to that. But why do you think people still don't see, uniqueness or value in their story?
It's a good question. I don't know. Most people, again, from people that I've talked to, they maybe think they're not interesting enough to be on the platform. It's just not true. And I'm not sure what that sort of belief shift is, but maybe it's a case of just, we're scrolling all day and we're almost numb to things at this point where they forget, I actually have a really powerful story to share. I think if people really sat in their thoughts for an hour and they really put it on paper and they wrote everything out and they talked about the struggles, the wins, the losses, there'd be a really good story there to share. I don't think people have gone through that exercise of actually really reflecting on their past. If you can do that, I think there's a story that will come out of it.
I think everything comes down to this concept of things being scarce. And that's that's the value that we're heading into the future is really this authenticity, vulnerability, and the information is going to be there. But it's that's the part that not everyone is willing to do. And I think even years ago, I think showing up authentically was still probably a scarce thing. I think what you're mentioning with personal branding, I truly believe it's a self-development journey. I think the more you self-develop as a person, the better your personal brand becomes. The more you spend time on reflecting on who you are, your values, what you've gone through, your story, your struggles, that is ultimately the key to how big your personal brand will be. Because the more you actually understand and are aware of it, the more you can actually showcase it as well. Obviously, there's a bit of a hump in terms of, am I able to be vulnerable and share that? But that's what I truly think it comes down to when you're connecting with your audience. The way I always look at social media is simply as a friendship. The way I think about short form content is when you go into a party and, everyone just says, hey, how you doing? Like the quick sort of conversation. That's the way I look at short form content. It's very quick and to the point, and you just get a glimpse of who that person is. But with your long form content, that's where, after you meet a couple of people at the party, you might go sit down in the couch or in the corner and you guys start talking a little bit more. And those are the moments where you start really building that connection, especially through long form. But what's really interesting is even if you have a long form conversation, even at the party, there's a lot of parties where essentially you don't really feel that connected at the end of it. And that's because people weren't actually vulnerable or shared those struggles. But those parties where you sat down and you guys actually talked about something a little bit deeper and you got a bit vulnerable in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't always have to be sad stories, but sharing something that you weren't truly willing to share, or, you're not actually willing to share to everyone. Again, that power of it being scarce and I'm not going to show everyone is why it's valuable. And I just truly think that social media is the exact same way as building friendships, and to build friendships in the real world is to be honest, is to be authentic. It's to show parts of yourself that maybe you wouldn't show everyone else. And I think if you're just able to do that online and try to connect with the audience and the public, I think you would build that connection really deeply as well.
Yeah, I think content is such a powerful personal development tool, right? Because if you can get over your fears and you can put yourself on the platform and you can put yourself on the platform in the most vulnerable way, you're going to grow as a person, right? If you're willing to put yourself out there for complete strangers to judge you, you're going to grow as a person, and it's going to translate to every other area of your life. So I always say is no matter whether you're trying to create a business or not, it's just the idea of putting yourself on the platform and posting a piece of content is going to help in so many areas, because you're probably going to care less about what people think of you. You're probably going to be more hyper aware of your strengths and your weaknesses and areas that you can improve. And you're just going to become more confident as a person because you are who you are. You're imperfect in a great way. And most people have been accustomed to this behavior of only putting their wins on Instagram. And it becomes this warped reality where that's actually not who you are. And the more that you can break that down and say, no, it's not just about the wins, it's about everything. It's the wins and the losses. That's where you can become, one, really powerful and appealing to an audience, but more confident and strong as an individual when you think about yourself as a person.
I'm interested. What do you think is a value that you hold pretty strong and dearly that you don't think your audience has understood about you yet? Or maybe like a story or some sort of area that maybe again hasn't been shown as much.
I think a value that's really important to me is loyalty. Actually, I think that's one of the most important things I look for in a person or even like a partner, but just someone who is loyal. I think that comes from obviously personal experience. I've been burned in the past and in relationships, and it certainly put up some walls. But I think a true test of character and someone who is a quality person is someone who is loyal. And I think in today's world that is becoming more and more scarce, just with, again, access to information, access to people. If you think about social media and even you go down to like a dating app, right? You just have so many options at your fingertips. And I think it's definitely affected human behavior. But, the people that for me have been with me from the start when I had nothing, right? Those are the people I really look at and like, you're a quality person because you've been there when I had nothing versus the people who've shown up at the end, right? So I think loyalty is something that for me is really important as a value, which I probably don't talk about a lot in my content.
Yeah.
But man, it's such a good quality. If you have that as a person, you are top notch.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Okay, yeah.
For me, there's two things that I just think about a lot, and I feel like it's the things I even want to like teach my son is integrity and self-belief. Those are the two things that...
Those are good ones.
Yeah. I just think with those two, a lot of the problems in your life can be like solved. Obviously, self-belief is, at every area of your life, like, are you able to understand that you have the power to change your life? And do you have the belief that you can actually do the thing that you're trying to do? Because I think everything really truly just comes down to belief, which is, if... I'll tell you something interesting, which I've heard is, do you know Tom Bilyeu?
No.
He's like a massive entrepreneur. I won't get into it too much, but basically he was working with people in, I'm pretty sure Compton or something like that. But it's basically like, these ghetto neighborhoods, and he was trying to give them like opportunities, and he actually interviewed them for his company to try and like get them to work with him. And he asked them like, what's your biggest dream? Like if you had a genie or something, like what is that wish that you could have? And so many of them said $1 million. And what he took away from that, which is so interesting, is they could have asked for $1 billion. They could ask for 10 million. They only just asked for $1 million. And it's so interesting because that's where their belief is capped. Yeah. And I think that is so important for absolutely everyone in every area of your life. It's like, even if we don't talk about $1 million, it's like, do you cap yourself at, can I earn 10K a month? And if you don't even believe it, your actions never allow you to even get to that point of trying to actually actualize it. And I think that is so important. So with self-belief, it's, can you keep breaking the barrier of your view of the world and opening up something else that's now possible? And I think that ties into like imagination and, us being as kids and curious. But self-belief, I think, is the cornerstone to like everything that I do. I think I didn't really have too much growing up. So trying to constantly believe in things that I couldn't even see as possible has been like absolutely everything to me. And I've always tried to instill self-belief in everyone else. But self-belief, I think, is very important. And then integrity, for me, because there's so much options now in the world, like what you mentioned with loyalty and, those sort of areas of, you can choose other things and you can act a certain way and then, another area act a certain way. I think there's a lot of that out in the world. And I think integrity is something that is scarce in terms of like, if I say something, I will act accordingly to that. And I'm true to my word. And I think those are the two things that is really important to me. And I try to even, showcase that in how I operate, how I think.
Yeah, I think self-belief, it's such an important skill, right? I think it can take you as far as you want it, right? And a lot of people do get held up, to your point, is they just don't believe in themselves. And if I think about your journey or my journey, a lot of it is just self-belief. Yeah. A lot of it is just not giving up. When I went to Mexico and I started over at 30, that was all self-belief because nobody else believed in me, right? My family, my friends, everyone was questioning the decision. And I said, no, I'm going to do this, right? And for a lot of time, I didn't know if it was going to work, but it was the self-belief that got you through. And that's what I love about content creators is it takes an enormous amount of self-belief to be successful on these platforms, because for a long time, it is just you, where nobody's liking your stuff, nobody's following you, nobody's supporting you. People are making fun of you. And it's until you cross that threshold of, maybe a certain amount of followers where now everyone shows up. But until then, it is you in a dark, empty room with a slow clap. That is it. And that is why I don't think creators get enough credit for the amount of mental fortitude you have to actually withhold to be successful. So anytime I see someone creating today, it doesn't matter if 100 followers or 100,000 followers, I'm like, that person has incredible self-belief that a lot of people don't, because they're willing to put themselves in the platform and be judged and be criticized and have nobody show up for them, but they're showing up for themselves. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the fact that you have, like with belief, you have to act as if something has already happened, or you have to have that delusion of you can get to that goal. And I think when you start with content creation, it's like everyone starts at zero. But the interesting thing about content is you're starting at zero in front of everyone. And I think that's the thing that's hard. Like if I want to go try a new skill, I can go try it tomorrow. None of you guys are going to see it. Like you're not going to know what I'm trying. And I don't put myself in that vulnerability state. But with content, you're starting at zero in front of everyone for a long period of time. And you have to like get over that of, I still believe in something that could happen and no one else can see it until it fucking does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to, what's that famous saying? Just because other people don't see the vision doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I love that quote.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That's why I think all of that, it just keeps tying that to self-belief. And it really comes down to that. I think that's the biggest thing I've like even learned in my life is it's because most people can't see it that they cap their belief at that point and they try to instill it in everyone else around them just because they can't see it. I don't think it's a purposeful thing that they do. I think it's very subconscious that, if I can't earn this amount or I can't build my life the way I want it, they are naturally going to not think everyone else can do it as well. And I think it's a natural response of how they're going to react to the world because they can't just like bypass that. But I do think it's very important to be aware of those aren't your thoughts. That's someone else's thoughts. And if you're able to have that imagination like belief of, is this possible? And seeing the glass half full of, is this, can I build my dream life? I think that's like so important for people.
Yeah, totally agree.
This concept of like self-belief, I think ties a lot back down to like trauma. And I don't know if you've heard of a person called Dr. Gabor Mate. I think everyone needs to watch some of his videos. I genuinely think he's like one of the greatest minds when it comes to like trauma. I think trauma is like, talked about a lot nowadays and, sometimes over talked and not really understood in the right way. But I think the way that he's explained it is like really, really powerful. And it kind of ties back into everything that we're saying of like, how do we get people to show up authentically? How do we get people to analyze their story and realize like it's a superpower? And basically what Dr. Gabor Mate talks about is everyone experiences trauma, like no matter what. But what we think about trauma is most people think trauma is what happened to us, but the way that he explains it is it's not what's happened to us, it's what happens inside of us because of what happened, like because of the experience. And understanding that the experience that we had is the level of trauma that we have, because some people go through like crazy stuff, but what happens inside of them isn't as, turbulent as someone else. And I think what's really interesting, the more I've studied about like trauma and human psychology, is when people go through trauma in their life, there's two paths that they usually go down. There's the one path where they become very detached from everyone and they hide themselves off in the world because they couldn't be as authentic. Because that's what every kid truly wants to be. It's like they show up authentically and the world either shuts them down and go like, you shouldn't be like that. Like that's too much, thinking too loud, not thinking too loud. You're thinking too big, speaking too loud, whatever it is. And there's that one path where they detach from the world. They go off to the side and they're like, I'm just going to be by myself. I'm going to be authentically myself, but I feel like I can't ever be attached. Whereas then there's the other side who changes themselves and they fit in. And that's like the two parts is they
conform to society based off trauma they experienced, now they kind of take that and then move into what everyone else is because they, for some reason, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So exactly, it's like they lose their authenticity in order to fit in. Yeah. And that's why a lot of people in the world that you'll find is they always talk about like finding themselves. And it's like because of that. It's because they're in the world and they're around everyone, but they're like, I'm not truly my authentic self anymore. And that's because, again, something happened in their childhood where they experienced like you shouldn't be authentically you and it got shut down. But I think it's so interesting to first identify like, which path you are, because I think it shows a lot in your character. That either you're the person that's truly yourself, but you're not able to show it to the world because you feel like you're going to get shunned, so you just stay by yourself, or you're in the world and you're still trying to find out who you are. And I think understanding that and going through that experience of going through your story, your childhood, like certain areas of yourself, you're able to identify, what areas was my authenticity cut off and how do I like regain that back? And I think it's a really powerful and interesting way to look at things because most people, think, how do I be authentic? But I think it really comes down to, can I reconnect myself to like being authentic and be accepted? And I think that's like what most people are craving is being authentic and being accepted. But I think people either pick one or the other. They go, I'm going to be authentic and be by myself, or I'm going to be accepted and not be myself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think most people wear a mask and they try to be someone they're not, or they try to hide imperfections that they're not willing to share. And it's not easy. It takes time, right? To be willing to open up and talk about your past is incredibly challenging. But the more you do it, the better you get. And the more that you do it, the more comfortable you are doing it. And you realize everyone else is going through something too, And I do think trauma and pain is actually really important in your life because it shapes you to become the person you want to be. Like, I am the person I am today because of the struggle that I've gone through. And, that probably, I think the biggest trauma that I had, or the first trauma that I had, was getting cheated on. That for me was like, that crushed me, right? Like with a girl that you just lose, how do I say this? All of your beliefs become warped because you trusted someone that all of a sudden you realize, wait, I was totally off. Like my bearings were completely off. So does that mean my bearings are completely off with everyone else I have a relationship with or my friendships? And for me, you talk about this idea of kind of isolating yourself from the world and putting up walls. That's the path that I took, right? After that trauma, I went off on my own, isolated from myself. I had a hard time trusting other people, and I didn't really want to be around other people, right? It was just like me sitting in that pain. And that I think has made me, again, that's why like I think the relationships I have today is because, again, once trust is broken, it's very hard to get it back. And it makes you really do a self-audit of who is around you. Are these the right people? And if they're not, cut them off, right? And keeping a small circle. But I do think having that pain of, it doesn't have to be a heartbreak, but it could be you lose your job. It could be just some other sort of failure that I think will shape you into the person that will become much, much stronger as a result versus someone who has never had a blemish, never gone through something challenging in life. That person is ready to get punctured, right? Because they haven't gone through any hardship.
Yeah.
But I think the hardship is going to make you a much better person as a result. And it's a hard one because I wouldn't recommend anybody to get cheated on or like fired from a job, but it's those experiences that are going to make you a better person as a result. So it's like, you don't wish that on anybody, but if that does happen to them, they're going to benefit from it later in life.
I think that's the hardest thing to like tell someone, hey, it's like going through something is probably like the greatest thing, but obviously not in that moment. But like what you mentioned, like struggle is the universal truth. And I think that is something that everyone relates to. Everyone understands struggle, no matter at every area of your life, even the richest people, even the poorest people. That's the one universal thing that we all share in common, which is like struggle. And I think being able to share that is how you can definitely connect the dots with like people. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to dig into the trauma piece for a second. Is from your perspective, why do you think it's so important that people lean into that side of their life. And I guess for someone who maybe hasn't shared that before or is worried about sharing it, how would you like encourage that person to, one, open up, but then do it in a way that actually is powerful on the platform and isn't necessarily like a sob story, right? It's done in a way that's actually productive.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question, because I think the human experience is to experience trauma and then using that level of pain and struggle, the universal thing that we all feel, and use it as our purpose and mechanism for how we want to bring good into the world. So that's why I think it's really, really important to understand that. One thing I've always said is our capacity to deal with hurt shows us our capacity to love. And I think that's really, really, really important, which is everyone is going to go through certain traumatic things in their life, but our capacity to actually deal with that and understand why that happened is going to be the mechanism to show us how we can bring more love into the world. And what I mean by that is...
Great quote.
Yeah, I made it up myself. But I truly think that's so important, because it's not about just understanding the hurt. It's our capacity to actually deal with it. And if we are understanding why we went through it and how it can be used now to actually bring more positivity, love into the world, I think that's why it's so important to understand that. And if you look at all like the personal brands in the space, they usually have some sort of story that now they use it as a driving force to inspire other people that's in that world who's still stuck in that trauma. Yeah. So I think that's like really important. And I think to reshift that now and be like, oh, like I experienced this so I can bring more positivity into the world is how I think people should be looking at it.
Yeah. It's, again, turning your mess into a message.
I love that.
Right? I always think is, even if you talk about this idea of like pain, right? You can't appreciate, I think, the emotion of even something like love until you feel the sting of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where if you've gone through a heartbreak, if you've gone through a breakup, it makes you appreciate the quality of that emotion so much more because you felt the other side of it. And that's where I think, heartbreak, trauma is so powerful because it makes you appreciate the good because you've experienced the bad. And I know that personally in my own life is, again, you go through something really hard and it makes you really appreciate the things when you have them because you know what it feels like to not have it. So I totally agree.
Yeah. It's interesting, even on a outsider, like audience, consumer point of view, if you just talk about your wins and they don't see the before side, they don't experience that with you as well. It's like, oh, he just won. But if you showed, I came from here, this was my experiences, this is what I had to go through, and then they finally see you win, everyone's like way more gassed for you. And I think that's what's happened with like Iman Gadzhi. It's like we fully understood his backstory. So when he kept winning, everyone was like living vicariously through him. Like they could feel that experience of like, he went from here to here. So it feels more exciting than he just won. So I think it's so interesting that even from the audience perspective, they can feel that, like that sort of feeling too.
Yeah, and people lose sight of that. Like imagine if you take two runners, right? You take a marathon runner who's going for sub 3, and that's all they talk about is, oh, I got a 2:59 marathon. Great. That's really impressive. But then if you take a second marathoner who tore his Achilles 6 months before, and he went through grueling rehab, and he got back on the road, and he started training again, and then he went and accomplished that sub 3, that is much stronger of a story because you've seen the struggle. So that's where a lot of people lose sight, is they focus so much on the outcome and the win without realizing the power of that win comes through the struggle that got you there. And if you can focus more on the story and the journey, that win that you want to talk about will become that much better as a result. But most people don't go there in the first place.
Yeah, I think that would be a great way for people to even think about creating content or personal branding is create contrast. Only through contrast does it feel exciting. If you just say the one thing, which is I just win, or even I just struggled, it isn't as exciting, but we need the contrast between this and that. So even if you do share things where you struggle, that's where it turns into like you're just sharing things that you struggle with or like, your trauma and stuff. But it needs to be like, I am here, but I want to get to here. And we need the contrast. So I think that's the differentiation even of, just spilling things out and being vulnerable for the sake of it, but showing that side and then being like, where am I going to go from here? Or how am I going to be able to use that? And like what you mentioned, like if that contrast between the first runner and the second runner, The second one is obviously so much more contrast. So that's why it makes it like way more exciting.
Yeah, people love stories. People love journeys, and it's in part because people are living vicariously through you. You're going on a journey that they want to go in, but they necessarily haven't taken the step. I'm going to say that again. People vicariously live through you, right? Because when they see your journey and they see your story, in part they want to participate in that, but they haven't actually taken the step. So they just live through your story instead. But that's where I think a lot of connection gets built, is watching the struggle, seeing that contrast, seeing the outcome, and then forming some sense of self-belief as, hey, I've watched this person do it. I might be able to do it too. And if that's how you get your self-belief, great. Like whatever it takes. But I think that almost is what is the driver for most people, is they see someone else do it first, and then they believe they can actually do it themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's even tying back into like the values and showcasing your values. I think most people, when they buy into someone, it usually, again, now is based on values and not like, the informational aspect. Because like so many people can help them with their problems, but they're buying into the values. But what they're really buying into, if I had to like really break it down, is they're buying into the values that they hold deeply or that they hope to hold. And it's like, it's an aspiration aspect. So it's like if someone holds these values and like we aspire to be like that person that has these type of values in their life, we want to buy into that because we're trying to get there. So there's two areas of, if you showcase your values, people are going to buy into it because they're on that same wavelength. They're like, okay, I like the aspects of this person, what they believe in, or I hope to be more like that. So I want to surround myself with that person, or I want them to help me with a problem because they're going to help me solve it in a way that I want to still hold integrity in my values. So I think, it's just so interesting that it's always coming down to, it's either aspiring to be that person, or, you're on that same sort of like wavelength as each other.
Yeah. And again, that's the power that values can play in your content, is it doesn't have to be explicit of I believe X, but can you wrap your content in that theme? When you think about my personal brand, no matter what I put out on the platform, everything is wrapped in this idea of, designing your own life and freedom and doing what you love and being happy and not feeling like you have to fit in. Like every piece of content is wrapped in that theme. And a lot of people lose sight of what their wrapper is. They just put out content. And it's like, if you can actually have some sort of cohesive branding or story, that wraps all your content, that's where no matter where someone lands on your page, they still understand you, and it connects back to that central theme. And if people can do a little bit of like self-auditing of what that wrapper should look like and integrate that into their content, whether it's explicitly or indirectly, you're going to be much more successful as a result. And the best creators that I see, again, the connection is built not off what they're telling you, it's how they make you feel. And that's what I would always drill into someone, is like, how do you drive that emotion through your content? That's where you're going to win or lose.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like if someone wants to really take that information in, this is like a framework I used to teach. And, I share this with you as well, is the very first thing is, it is, again, a self-development journey. So it's like understanding every area of your life. So like really breaking things down, what was my experiences? What are my core beliefs? What are my values? Like really breaking all of this down and writing all of that out. And then in your content, you'll realize most people talk about the what and the how, and they talk about what they're doing or how they're doing something. But usually people don't touch into the why. And that's where you want to bring in your values, is why are you doing that thing? You're trying to build a business, great. You're telling me what you're doing, and you might be telling me how I'm using this vehicle, but why are you doing it? And that is going to be attached to your values. So the more you understand and self-aware of like, what you believe in, and then being able to show the why in your content, I think is a great tool to be able to wrap that around. And like what you mentioned, it's like, wrap it around stories as well. It's not explicitly saying, this is why I'm doing this. It's like, wrap it around a story of like, truly, why is it important for you?
Yeah, and it goes back to that exercise, the 5 whys, whatever. It's such an incredible exercise. If someone could say, well, I want to start a business. It's like, well, why do you want to start a business? It's like, well, I want to start a business so I can be in control of my time. And it's like, okay, well, why? And it's, well, maybe my parents were working 4 jobs and they never saw the kids, and I don't want that when I'm a parent. And then you just continue to dig deeper. And all of a sudden it's like, that is a much stronger reason for why you're doing this versus I just want a business. And if people can kind of unpeel the onion and do that exercise, you're going to get to a point where you have such a strong set of beliefs and values as to what it is that you're doing and why. One, it's going to become very clear in how you sort of wrap your content, but two, it's going to keep you going because it's a reminder of why you're doing this. And if you can do that exercise, again, if you can sit down and grab a piece of paper and put things like tangibly in front of you to react to, you're going to become a better creator. You're going to become more intentional with your content, and you're probably going to be more consistent because it's a reminder directly in front of you of why you're doing it.
Isn't it so crazy that we grow up and we've never asked ourselves why like multiple times? Usually we just get, thrown into like school, our parents teach us and things, and we essentially have like one layer of why. Like, this is why you should do this. This is why this is happening. And we just get told, and we just like hold that belief as like, oh, I guess this is our why. But it's actually crazy that most people, like even you just said it then, on that third level of why, it starts being like a bit more real and authentic. Even the first layer or the second layer, it's like you start peeling the onion a little bit, but it's usually once you get to that third layer or like deeper, you start understanding yourself. But it's just so crazy that most people haven't spent the time to, just like really write this down or like figure this out. So
yeah, it's just, again, if you were to compare two people and one person says, I want to start a business. Great. And then if someone says, well, I want to start a business because I want to be in control of my time and my financial situation, and it's because of my parents and the struggle they went through, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen when I'm a parent. Same outcome. They both want a business, but I have a much deeper relationship and connection with that person because of the story. And it's like, I'm now bought into that because I want that for you too, right? Versus just the surface level, I want a business or I want to make money online. And again, if people can turn their attention towards, again, unpacking everything that is, your past, packaging it and using it as fuel, that's where you become dangerous. That's where you become like really, really unstoppable.
Yeah.
Let's talk about longevity, right? When you think about building a personal brand and using values to your advantage, why do you think that's so important when you think about creating longevity in not only your brand, but potentially a business? And why is it more important for creators to, again, maybe take slower success in the beginning because they are focusing on maybe values-driven content versus cash grab, like short-term thinking, going after whatever works in that moment?
I think because we value trust and friendship very deeply, in the sense of if we want to go travel somewhere, we want to go eat at a restaurant, like a lot of people ask their friends first versus like just going on like Instagram or TikTok. Like some people, they love to like, experience different things, but usually we try to go to our friends first, even though they might not be some, amazing person like that knows all the restaurants. Like they don't have that sort of expertise, but we still go to our friends for some of these questions. And I think that comes back to the same thing of personal branding, which is if you really can get them to connect with you as a person and build that trust and that friendship, no matter what you sell, no matter what you do, no matter what you offer, people are still going to buy into you. And I've seen that in the personal brands that have like outlasted for like the last 5-10 years. It doesn't matter what they sell. It doesn't matter what they do. We're just bought into the person. And I think that is really important in this upcoming future as well, because there's going to be so much information. There's going to be so many offers and problems to solve, but it's like, who do I want to solve this problem with? And I think the stronger the connection that we have with our audience in terms of that friendship and trust, I think that's going to be very, very valued.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Do you think creators hide behind value because it feels safer than showing them or showing the world who they actually are?
I think that's a great question. And I do think that. I think it's just hard in general, even in the offline space, like in real life, to be vulnerable and to be able to share stuff. I think most places or most circles growing up, like what I mentioned, it's like you either isolate yourself to be authentic or you fit in and you're like, I shouldn't fully be myself. I shouldn't fully say all these things that I truly believe in. So yeah, I think it's hard. I think people do hide behind that. I think there is a caveat to that is I think there is still an area, and I push back on this because I don't want everyone to always just go full left into just values. I think there is a level of competence that you always need to keep showing, because it's like, yeah, they have to know that you can solve a problem. But like I mentioned, at a certain point, it's like, okay, this person can solve the problem, and it's like, you got to go into the values. But yeah, I do think people hide behind it. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think people are terrified to share who they really are. You know, I think everyone has gotten accustomed to seeing perfect lifestyles on Instagram, and, you know, unrealistic expectations of what the world actually is and what life looks like. And for people to step in and share, again, a vulnerable side of them for complete strangers to judge, I think is a very difficult ask for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's weird because once you do it, you realize it's not that scary. Like once you do it, I think that first post is so terrifying. But when you actually put yourself out on the platform and say, this is who I am, this is what I've struggled with, this is what I've learned about it, this is what I'm doing, you'll realize a lot of people will attach onto it. And they'll say, wow, I'm going through that too. Like I needed to hear this today. And then it makes that exercise so much easier because you realize, wow, a lot of other people are going through this too. And I've helped this person as a result of me stepping out there and putting myself in an uncomfortable spot. And it's that fuel that I think keeps you going, where, you know, when I think about the first post that I ever put up that was vulnerable, it was really scary. But now I put it out there and I don't even think about it because I know someone's going to respond to it. I know someone's going to send me a message and say, hey, I needed to hear this to get out of bed every day, or I needed to hear this to get out of bed today. And for me, that's like all I need, right? Is like, sure, there might be some people who make fun of me, but I helped one person across the world in some way. And that's all I need to make a decision and do it again.
Yeah. I think that is the trigger that needs to happen in everyone's mind is, like I mentioned, it's like, if you're able to deal with that hurt or that sort of, you know, struggle or whatever you're going through, and you turn it into something that you now value and you want to share that into the world, it helps so many people. And I think if you just understand that if you share your struggles, or if you share any aspect of your life, like why you do certain things, it's going to help people. And I think, yeah, like reframe it into like, you're not just sharing your struggles like for the sake of sharing. It's like, this is a helpful tool for people to connect to.
Someone actually, it's a good segue, because someone told me something when I first started with content that changed everything about the way I think about putting stuff on the platform. And they said, if you don't put out your struggles, you're selfish.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you are a selfish person. I'm like, well, why? And they're like, because someone needs to hear it. And you're making it about you by not putting it out on the platform. You're so worried about what people think and your own insecurities and your own fear that you're not willing to put it out there. But in reality, it's not about you. It's about your viewer. And someone out there who's sitting in bed, who's struggling, needs to hear it. And if you can't deliver that message to them, you are selfish. And that has changed everything about the way that I think about content. It's not about me. I can put myself out on the platform in the most vulnerable way because someone's going to benefit from it. And it's like that mindset shift I think every creator has to adopt is, it's not about you. It's about someone out there who's watching your stuff. And if you can do that more often than not, people are going to buy into you as a person. People are going to follow you. People will buy from you. And again, it goes back to that trust and that level of connection you can build.
That's honestly so powerful. Like, yeah, it's just reframe it, because everyone naturally thinks of it as like me, and they just always focus on themselves. And that's why I keep tying back to, it really does come down to trauma. Like I truly believe so many decisions in our life comes down to understanding like what happened to us as like kids and even teenagers, like whatever it is, like even adults, like trauma happens at different areas of our life. But it does come down to that, because we either shift off into, I'm going to be by myself and, you know, I don't really want to share my authenticity, or I'll just fit in. And I think that's what we're seeing on social media in general is everyone shows wins. And it's like, everyone's like, I guess I have to fit in by showing these things, because if I show the other thing, I'm not going to fit in anymore. And I think that's what everyone is afraid of is, can I show up authentically and still fit in? And I think that's the gap that everyone needs to bridge. I think it happens within ourselves, like understanding these things within ourselves, and slowly through action as well. Like what you mentioned, like just through action of posting it once and being like, oh, how does it feel? You know, just how does it make me feel? And can I do it again? Then try again. And it's like, it is through action as well. You can't just do it by just like mentally thinking about it all day. But so interesting. I'm curious for you, if like, how would the space be if people, let me kind of explain here is tying back to the concept of value. And, if something is scarce, that's how it's valuable. If a bunch more people started coming to the platform, sharing these things, do you think it could get saturated or, too many people sharing that stuff and become less valuable?
Yeah, I view content in the same way I look at fashion, right? Things come in and out of style, right? Now, I think we're seeing a big swing to, verbal storytelling. That's where the platform is moving. And I think it's because there was a lack of that sort of content before, where everyone was putting out visual style storytelling. I think the same goes with value versus values-driven content. Is if all of a sudden the platform got flooded with people talking about how they feel, people are probably going to start craving, well, I actually want to learn something, right? So then the pendulum will swing.
Yeah, so interesting.
And I think that's the balance, is things come in out of style, just like fashion. And I think content is one of those things that you have to keep your pulse, your finger on the pulse and figure out kind of where are the gaps and where you can play. I think right now people are really craving authenticity and realness. I don't think that will ever go away, but there's a point where probably you have to balance it out and make sure that you are ultimately delivering value to your viewer. And again, it goes back to that like level of competency. I think you have to establish first versus going straight into how you feel, right? If you can balance the two and it's a little bit of a chess match, that's probably not a pure 50-50. It could be 40-60, it could be 70-30, it could be 90-10 at times. Probably like a marriage, right? You have to keep your finger on the pulse. But if you're proactive and you can kind of stay ahead of the curve and take twists and turns, that's where I think you can be pretty successful.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to understanding the meta of like what is happening and finger on the pulse, because it definitely is going to more storytelling. I've seen it so much of people just sharing more personality and personal insight versus more information. But I'm very curious to, just see, I guess, with AI as it speeds up, because honestly, it really is speeding up. There's a lot of interesting things now where, like at what point do certain art forms and things get devalued because it's so easy to create? Like creating, like even information, like packaging things up, like when that slowly gets devalued because so easy to do, how far can we go into, I guess just like the personality and authenticity? I truly think that's where we're heading, is the AI world is going to move us deeper into understanding ourselves and being more authentic. I really truly think we're going to like remove so much of the jobs that we hate and the tasks that we really don't want to do, because I think everyone's afraid of it, but it's like, I think there's so many tasks that people don't really want to do. But I truly think everything is going to head further into authenticity. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing of like, where does it really head? Because it feels like it's swung back and forth, but I don't know. It's just in my mind, I'm like, I don't see it swinging back to like more information because of AI. Like we're at this weird point of the information is going to be like even heavier. But what I think is an interesting thing is the people that know how to solve problems. In the sense of, you have all the information, but who is the person that is the architect? I think that is going to be the value or the information in the future, is the architects and the people who like craft things. So it is a information world, but it's more of like, how can you be creative with information?
Yeah, I think the best storytellers are going to win, because to your point, I don't actually see it swinging back the other way. It might swing back a little bit, but it's never going to swing back fully.
I feel like we're naive, and I feel like life will probably swing it back, but from our perspective, it just doesn't seem like it.
No, I think I agree with you. I imagine a world where if people want information, they go to ChatGPT and they get the information. When they want connection, they go to Instagram and they connect with their favorite creators. They connect with other people. They have some sort of relationship, whether it's artificial or in person, online. And again, like the ability to drive authenticity through content and tell stories is where I think you can make or break your success, because it will be incredibly easy to put together content with one prompt. It's like, boom, here's a piece of content. The one thing you can never replace is the person, right? Nobody can replace your story. Nobody can replace my story. I don't care what robot you bring into this world. They're not living in Mexico for 9 months, right? Yeah. So that's the piece I think people really need to like hold on to. One, define, identify, do a little bit of self-reflection and figure out what is your story. and then hold on to that because nobody can take that from you.
Yeah. It's the randomness and the uncertainty of, because again, AI and stuff, it's like, it's coded. Everything is certain. It's like structured. And like what you mentioned, like it's not even the robot going to Mexico. It's like the uncertainty of what's going to happen. I think that's the beauty in it. So yeah.
I think there's something powerful in being comfortable with the unknown, of just walking with not necessarily any sort of clear direction of where you're headed. Like you might be going forward, but you don't exactly know where it's leading. And I think that is often what the world of content creation is you're posting and you're posting and you're posting, nothing's happening. You don't really know where it's leading you. You don't know what doors it's going to open, but you still walk. And the people that can, again, remove that desire for certainty and say, I'm going to move anyway, are the people that ultimately see success because they're comfortable with the fact that, hey, uncertainty is not a bad thing. It's actually a really exciting thing where you're going to open up doors you didn't even think were possible because you continued to move. And from what I see in the space today, most people get so stuck on the starting line because they're so worried about where it's leading them. And it's like, no. Just walk. Just walk and see where it takes you. That's the beautiful part about it.
I love it.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. We'd love to know, if you were creating content tomorrow, what are the 3 values that would be super important for you when you think about building your personal brand? Leave them in the comments. We'd love to know, and we will be getting back to you. So hope you enjoyed the conversation. We will be back next week with another exciting topic. But Pavan, it was a pleasure.
I love it. We'll see you next week.
All righty. See you, team.